Today we are reviewing the opening hook for the Hip Hop Wealth Code, a project aiming to translate the self-made success stories of hip hop into simplified, actionable financial concepts for young entrepreneurs.
Right.
The submitted text reads, "They came from nothing, no connections, no inheritance, just vision, hunger, and an unbreakable code. This is the wealth code they never teach in school, and today we're breaking it down."
Okay.
Jumping right into the feedback, the current opening delivers tremendous emotional energy, but risks alienating practical-minded young entrepreneurs if the transition to actual financial mechanics isn't immediately bridged.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the weakness here is that the framing of vision and hunger leans really heavily on survivor bias and, well, hustle culture, frankly.
Right, which doesn't automatically translate to the stated goal of simplifying complex financial concepts.
Exactly. The focus is currently skewed way too far into pure motivation. It leaves this massive gap between the inspirational rhetoric and the, rigorous financial methodology the audience is actually looking for.
So, a key theme running through this material seems to be overcoming incredible odds. But I wonder, does framing it purely as "they came from nothing" accidentally overshadow the highly technical business acumen and contract negotiations that actually created the wealth?
Building on that point, what if we looked at it from the perspective of the entrepreneur reading this? They need the how, not just the why. If I'm a young founder reading this hook, my immediate fear is that I'm about to get another generalized motivational speech.
Like wake up at 4 in the morning and grind.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than a genuine masterclass in wealth generation.
I hear that, but aren't vision and hunger kind of the absolute prerequisites for surviving the music industry, or really any startup environment for that matter?
Oh, they're prerequisites, certainly, but they aren't a business model.
Fair point.
To fix this, the suggestion is to ground the unbreakable code in tangible financial realities before the introduction concludes, so the young entrepreneur immediately recognizes this material as a concrete financial toolkit rather than just another, motivational speech.
You have to deliver the protein, not just the sugar rush of the underdog story.
Right, exactly.
Let's talk about how to actually write that transition. The text currently stops at "today, we're breaking it down."
Which is a bit of a cliffhanger.
It is. So instead of stopping there for a concrete example, append a sentence that previews the specific financial mechanics being simplified. For instance, you could say, "We're breaking down how owning your masters translates to intellectual property leverage."
Oh, I like that.
And you could add how royalty streams function like dividend stocks and how independent distribution models act as the ultimate guide to bootstrapping a startup.
Notice the psychological shift that creates for the reader. When you place a term like intellectual property leverage directly alongside owning your masters, you immediately legitimize the hip-hop narrative.
In the eyes of a traditional business reader, you mean?
Exactly. You're bridging two very different worlds in a single authoritative sentence. You're telling the reader, hey, I understand the raw cultural history, but I also possess the technical vocabulary to make it useful to you.
Let me stop you there, though, and just play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
If I drop terms like dividend stocks and intellectual property leverage into the very first paragraph, don't I risk boring the reader who just came for the hip-hop energy? Like, doesn't that kill the vibe?
Well, it only kills the vibe if you fail to explain the connection, right? Which is why the phrasing has to be incredibly deliberate. Think about the actual mechanics of a royalty stream.
Okay.
In the corporate world, a dividend stock is just an equity share in a company that pays out a portion of its earnings to investors, on a regular basis.
Right.
In the music industry, a master recording is the underlying asset, and every time it streams, it pays a micro royalty. It's the exact same financial mechanism, holding an asset that generates passive, recurring revenue.
So by explicitly stating that connection in the hook, you aren't boring the reader. You're making a binding promise.
Yes, exactly. You're saying, I'm going to extract the underlying economic theory from these cultural stories so you can apply it to your tech startup or your retail business.
It totally changes the value proposition of the material, from pure entertainment to, applied science.
Yeah, and it proves that the author respects the reader's time.
That requirement for actionable data actually brings us to our second point. Relying on the broad phrase, "the wealth code they never teach in school," positions the material in a crowded self-help market without capitalizing on its most unique asset, which is the specific hip-hop lens.
The weakness here is that the never-teach-in-school trope is a well-worn cliché. I mean, it's utilized by countless generic financial gurus and internet marketers.
It's everywhere on digital course ads.
It really is. And using it here dilutes the highly specific, unique cultural angle of hip-hop's economic history. It makes the project sound like standard financial advice, just, wrapped up in a flashy title.
I'd argue it's even deeper than that, actually. The phrase, never teach in school, implies a sort of benign neglect. It suggests the education system just happened to overlook these financial lessons.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Right? But hip-hop wealth wasn't created in a vacuum of absent education. It was created in direct opposition to active predatory corporate structures.
Yeah, they had to outsmart corporate gatekeepers and hostile lawyers.
Exactly. Record label executives who were actively trying to exploit them.
That is a crucial distinction. It really strips away the actual cultural context that makes the source material so compelling. So the suggestion here is to replace the generic trope of institutional rebellion.
Meaning the word school?
Right, replace school with the specific industry rebellion or cultural disruption that actually reflects how this wealth was generated.
We need to ground the rebellion in the actual historical mechanics. So, for concrete examples, frame the rebellion around specific barriers these artists overcame.
What would that look like?
Well, instead of school, try something like, this is the wealth code forged in independent studios, trunk of the car distribution networks, and hostile master recording negotiations.
Trunk of the car distribution networks? That is incredibly visual, and it's highly specific.
It's visual, yeah. But more importantly, it's the exact historical equivalent of a modern founder bootstrapping a direct-to-consumer supply chain.
Oh, wow.
Think about the mechanics of selling CDs out of a trunk in the 1990s, right? You're bypassing the middleman distributor who normally takes the massive cut. You're retaining complete control of the inventory.
You're interfacing directly with the end consumer, too.
Yes, getting immediate feedback and keeping 100% of the profit margin. That isn't just a fun anecdote about a rapper. That's a masterclass in D2C supply chain logistics.
That's brilliant.
Alternatively, you could try, these are the financial blueprints built entirely outside the traditional banking system by those who were denied access to it.
I want to dissect that second option for a second, because highlighting the necessity of the innovation is incredibly relevant right now.
How so?
Well, these pioneers didn't just casually choose to bypass the banks, right? They had to invent a parallel financial ecosystem because traditional capital was gatekept from them.
Right. They had no choice.
Exactly. And if you're a young entrepreneur reading this today, you might be facing tightening venture capital markets or soaring interest rates or investors who just don't get your vision.
So the implicit message becomes, if they could build global empires without bank loans, I can teach you how to build your startup without venture capital.
Yes, but let's see how we can strengthen this. If I'm a young tech entrepreneur, I need to know why the hip-hop method specifically helps my startup.
Right.
Is the connection between the music industry's history and a standard business fully established in the material, or is that an area to potentially bolster?
I can see what you're going for here, but let me just pause and consider the potential friction. If we get too deep into the weeds of the music industry, talking specifically about, say, master recording negotiations or record pressing plants, do we risk alienating a reader who's just trying to build a software-as-a-service company?
I don't think so.
Why should a SaaS founder care about a hostile master recording negotiation?
Because specificity is the vehicle for universality. A vague platitude about hustling outside of school teaches the SaaS founder literally nothing.
Fair.
But a detailed breakdown of a hostile master recording negotiation teaches them everything. Just consider the mechanics of a predatory record deal.
Walk me through it.
The label offers a massive cash advance, but in exchange, they take ownership of the underlying intellectual property and they cross-collateralize all future earnings against that advance.
Okay, yikes.
Now look at a predatory Series A term sheet from a venture capital firm. The VC offers a massive cash injection, but they take punitive liquidation preferences, a controlling board seat, and anti-dilution clauses that completely strip the founder of their equity.
Wow, it's the exact same hostile machinery, just wearing a different suit.
Exactly. When you describe the precise mechanics of how a hip-hop artist navigated that predatory record deal to retain their equity, the software founder immediately recognizes the parallels to their own VC negotiations.
The specific details create a functional blueprint. whereas a cliché about school just creates noise.
That makes sense, but could the evidence also support a different conclusion? I mean, is there a risk that focusing solely on school might overlook the actual corporate gatekeepers these artists outsmarted?
Yeah, absolutely. That requires the reader to do a bit of translation, right? Mapping the music industry terms to their own corporate environment. Which actually brings up our third point regarding the structural obligation the author has created for themselves.
The breaking it down prompt.